Well, welcome back to another fun-filled edition of Aztec Dummy Productions presents things to amuse you in the off chance that you're watching. I'd like to put out a special shout-out to my new subscribers. I have just checked and I am up over 450 subscribers. And you can't all be insomniacs. So, apparently there is something out there that their people are enjoying. I had an interesting weekend. It wasn't my favorite kind of weekend. I'm working on the Viper Mark VII. Just a personal build. Not working on template set for this because really there is no special painting to be done on it. It's just to replace one that I had sold and wanted to build another one for myself. And I was really getting frustrated with it. And it was kicking my butt left and right. Excuse me, kicking my butt left and right. And I realized, why am I doing this to myself? This is a hobby for me. That this kit, again, this isn't anything that is being built for anybody else but me. So I realized that I was doing it. I was my own worst enemy, and I was doing it to myself. So I put it down, and I do what I normally do when I get frustrated with things, and that is I went on a cleaning binge. I went on a tear around the house. Just finally either just throwing stuff out or organizing it or moving it to another pile, from one pile to another. So that's why I didn't get a lot done on the Viper this weekend. What I was working on is the cockpit and the engines, and it's small work and it's tedious, fiddly work, and I get frustrated with it. And it's also in metallic paints, which I have a hard time with because I never give them proper time to dry in between coats. And I just get my greasy thumbprints all over everything. And I was working with a photo etch on the cockpit. And I started off trying to make it nice and clean. And, excuse me, it never ended that way. So, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And not a lot to show for the weekend. I did take some footage of the finished Galactica, which I'll splice in after this. Working on the Viper engines to get them ready for lighting. Let me get that. Quit shooting into the reflection of the fluorescent light. Will be okay. This is how the stock part comes, and this is the photo etch that goes in this opening. Now what we need to do is carve out this area right here so that we can put a bulb right here and shine that way. This is what one looks like once you have carved it out. Now I've done this before on the last build, and what I ended up doing was also getting rid of this pin, so that this pin and this receptacle for this pin, so that there's room actually for a bulb there. Normally I would worry that is not going to give you enough glue surface to work with, but what I plan on doing is after I put the bulb in here, I'm going to put a lot of epoxy sculpt in around that and jam the 2 sides together, and between that and the gluing around the edge, that's going to be a gracious plenty mating surface for glue. So that's not going to be an issue. So what I need to do is, here's what it looks like to start. And I want to leave just a little bit of that lip. I don't want to take it all the way, out to the walls, because if I do, then I'll have no surface to run this up against. Before I put the photo etch in place, I need to glue the backing on to them. I'm using a little bit of micro crystal clear, and I'm just touching it just in the corners, and then I'm going to put the photo etch over top of it. This one I've already gotten done, and really that's just enough to tack it in place, because capturing that photo etch between the 2 sections is going to do a lot to keep the backing film, what does Paul call it, the backlit film, keeping that in place. So that I have to do that delicate work on the 3 engines, and then I can trap them in place, or at least glue them in one half of it and get ready for the bulbs. I also want to, it reminds me, before I do all of that, I want to paint the inside of these engine bells. I get those painted before I do any of that other work, but I can still do the backlit film, and I think I'm going to do the same thing with the backlit film that I need for the cockpit. There are some very good pieces in here, but I need to glue them to the inside of that. But that also reminds me that I need to put the final top coat of color on this. This is the primer coat and is not going to be the final color. Here is the lighting solution for the top engine. I've got the wired 3mm cool white LED, and I've got it sitting in a little bed of epoxy sculpt so that it is suspended at the center mark. It is, if I can get the focus here, it is sitting dead center in the opening, and I have the etch and the backlit film glued into the back of the, or in place on the other side, and that is where I've got another little bed of epoxy sculpt sitting in here. I'll clean out that joint a little bit, and then when I put some glue in there and squeeze the two halves together, not only will that solidify where that bulb is and let it dry, but it will also light block around it. So we'll see how that works. Preparing the other 2 main engines. Here I've got the PE and the backlit film glued in place and drying, and I've got the 2 inboard sections glued together. I'm going to use a, much like I did on the smaller engine, I'm going to use a big old bead of epoxy sculpt sitting in there so that I can position the bulb right in front of it, and run a wiring out to the back. This is the one of the main engines with the LED in place. At first I didn't think a 3mm was going to be big enough, but I tried to test it, and it's going to light up just fine. What I like about the epoxy sculpt in this situation, rather than using the 2-part Loctite epoxy putty, is that the extended set time gives me a chance to fine-tune it and move the bulb around a little bit before the putty really sets up. The Loctite putty that I would use would be rock hard by now, and I would be more or less locked in to a position on that. Let me close this up and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, I'm putting this down on the bare bulb, so that on the bare LED, that's why it's flickering. And the camera, of course, blows it out a little bit more than in real life. But if you could see it the way I'm seeing it, you would see that that bulb is sitting dead center inside the backlit film. So it's on to the next one. Okay, this is extremely frustrating to do with one hand. Right, here we go. Okay, that's both of the engines lit. Well, the 2 lower engines lit, and there they are not lit. But like I said, I'm trying to run this off of the holding the wiring down to a battery just temporarily. There you go. So I put the 3rd one on and glue all the pieces down, and it'll be done for the evening. Getting ready to start painting, which is always the fun part. The Viper, the Mark II that this is, has 2 basic colors to it. That being, I'm sorry, the Mark VII. Why did I think Mark II? I'm so stupid. Turn in my geek license. Has 2 basic colors to it. The outside color of this, which is a grayish blue, what they're calling, I've seen used as Pontiac engine blue metallic, which is has that kind of a look to it. And then the other main color is a gunmetal, or a dark metallic gray, a very dark metallic gray, not a black and not a chrome silver. And that goes for the engines, and a lot of the cockpit details are that color, and the guns, a lot of the trim pieces are that color. So that's what I'm going to be painting now, is the cockpit details, and the engines. Okay, and I noticed I start all of my video segments with okay, but that's just my particular speech impediment, and I'm going to stick with it. What I've done is sprayed a lot of these parts with the metallic, the metallizer gunmetal, buffing metallizer gunmetal Model Masters. And what you're seeing here is parts from two different kits, because I've got two, more than one kit going at a time. And I'm going to, make the most efficient use of my paint while it's in the airbrush and the airbrush is working, by spraying as many things as I need to spray with that while I've got it open. So, what I'd like to do is, now that these pieces, and particularly the pieces for the Viper, have been base coated, and then they've been a light coat of this gunmetal, is I'm going to dry brush over them now. I'm going to dry brush just a little bit of a brighter, it's a chrome silver, but it's not, I'm not going to try to put the, the really shiny chrome on it. I just want to give it some highlighting of a dry brush, just to break up the overall texture of it, and give it some depth to the metallic look. Now these are also, I remember where the lens is. These are the additional panels that go on top of the walls that are in the cockpit. Cockpit is folded together, but you can see those indents and such where these panels are supposed to go. And they all have backlit film that goes behind them. But they obviously needed to be painted before the backlit film goes on. So that's where I am with these pieces. I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting and then stick the backlit film on them. Also, what I would like to do about with the highlighting is to do the main engines. There are detail pieces that go where those little divots are, and I want to do some dry brushing before I attach those pieces to the outside. Hopefully you can see the benefit of doing the dry brushing of silver over top of the gunmetal. Is it, like I said, it accentuates the depth, and it brings out the highlights, and gives it a more generally aged look and a worn look to the instrument panels. Here's what it looks like on the engines. Again, not a plastering, but it picks up some highlights here and there. It's really a question more about how the light hits it than it is as much as introducing a new color. Let me see another good example. Well, on these guns, it makes them look more worn. It highlights ends. It just breaks up the overall color, and it just accentuates some areas of wear, makes it more interesting to look at. And here's the baby wee engine that goes on the top. Now what I would like to do next is I'm still going to scorch the back end of that with a flat black to show the carbon scoring from the actual engine firing. That'll add more life to that, but I'm going to let this coat dry. Actually, there's some detail parts that need to be added here. I can go ahead and do that now that I've weathered basically underneath where those parts go on. And then here are the additional panels that will go on the cockpit. And now that once these dry, I can go ahead and put the backlit films behind them. Here's some more of my famous shaky cam holding wires to the battery work, but I've got a tiny little one of those pico sized chip mounted LEDs up in the heads-up display. Let me see if I can focus in on that. It's poking its wee head right out of there, and this is, now I gotta find it, this is, oops, and this is what goes over top of that. I'm just going to put a little bit of the microcrystal clear as an adhesive to try to glue that in place. Here is the backlit film at the back of the main console. It's not pretty on this side, but since it's meant to be seen from this side, it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go in there and touch some color to some of those buttons that are not lit, just to give some detail and some more life to it. But once the light is, I don't know if you can see it from behind, that's kind of what it looks like when it's lit up. So I think it's going to be pretty. I have been engaging in hand-to-hand combat with these engines all morning. It is, I don't even know what time it is. I got up this morning and started working on them, and those pieces kicked my butt. I don't know what it is. Those little fine piping engine pieces did not want to go on, did not want to stay on, did not want to attach. As particularly those ones did not want to go on or attach or stay. So that, a lot of wrestling with that, plus the fact that it's metallic paint, and I hate metallic paint because it never dries. I mean, it takes forever to dry, at least. And then what was going on with this? Now, what that milkiness you see is a little bit of clear part cement and window maker. I'm trying to make a bezel over that display. Those ones have already dried in a little bit more than that one. This one was a little bit thicker. But all of the nice, neat work that I tried to do on this console to keep it clean and sharp just went straight out the freaking window. And I have nothing to blame for it but my own grubby fingers. I just can't work as cleanly as I would like to work. Let me see if I can light this thing up. Hold on one second. There is the lights both shining down from that. Come on, focus. Up underneath there, and there's a light leak I need to tend to. And then that lower light is working. And then everything else will be hopefully handled by a main 3mm behind it. I got some of these panels put into here. Again, then that's something that will have a light behind it. And I got that in. So now it's a question of letting everything freaking dry and putting it into place within the rest of the cockpit. But I need to walk away from this for a while, and perhaps for the rest of the weekend. This may be what I get done. As promised, here's an update on the Galactica and how it turned out. You'll notice that the high gloss shine on it is gone, and it looks a lot less like a toy and more like a display model. And that's because I gave it liberal dosings of flat Krylon flat finish, and if you zoom in on here you can see the effect of the shading on some of the bits. And the decals have with the decal solva set have flattened right down. I'm trying to get a focus here. Have flattened right down and have all but disappeared from the carrier film. Now that word looks like it's crooked, but it is not. I assure you, I have measured it. I don't know why it looks like it's higher on the right hand side than it is the left, but maybe if I do this it'll look less less conspicuous, but it is straight. And you can see what a good job the Solvaset does on really sucking the decal down around the raised detail. Now, on the actual kit, that is not raised detail, that is sunken detail. But you take the kit for how it's presented to you. Same with that. It was actually lower or sunken detail. One of my fellow modeling maniacs on the Amazing Plastics forum, named Jay Barron, has released a ton of shots of the actual Galactica filming model, and it is surprisingly a lot whiter than this. And there's that patched decal on that side that I had to kind of make from the wretched remains of the other decal scraps. Getting back to Jay Barron released a treasure trove of pictures of the filming model that show it to be almost completely white. Actually, his picture shows how badly it's aging, because parts of it have turned yellow, particularly under the decal. But his was a lot whiter, or the actual filming model was a lot whiter than this. And what they did is they relied on the studio lights to cast harsh shadows across it, and thereby give you the sense of scale of the ship. It's the same trick that they used on the Star Destroyer in Star Wars. No big surprise there, since a lot of the model makers were the same on both projects. But I don't have the luxury of having those expensive high-powered studio lights to cast harsh shadows, so I had to paint my shading in. And I'd do it again. I am not a big fan of how white and stark that model turned out to be, so given the choice between that and what I did, I'll stick with what I did. It's a little grayer, it's a little darker, it's certainly more interesting looking than the studio model. Let me see if I can get underneath here to show you some more of the detail. Now, it's possible that I may revisit this at some point and lighten it up. As it sits now, I'm happy with how it looks. I'm happy to sit with it the way it is. But I can see that, you know, maybe someday I'll come back and highlight this with a white, just to lighten it up some. But she's done. And so you can see it wasn't a very productive weekend. What I can show you now is where things stand as of Sunday afternoon, and we can go from there. On the cockpit, I have the panels put in. Try to get some lighting over it so that you can at least see the meager fruits. Got the panels in. I'm going to try to touch those with a little bit of color to brighten them up. Now when the bulbs are in place, it'll look something like that. So you will see lights in there. Oh, come on. Yeah, there's a light in there, so that bit will be lit up. The main panel, of course, came apart again, and that was one of the 3 steps back. I do have the, and I put the battery away, so let's grab it back out. Let's see. There's the light on both of those. Oh, come on. There we go. That's the lighting in there. And then there will be a light behind it, so that's the state of it. Oh, and the last thing would be these accursed engines, which do have finally all the little fiddly piping on. And I went back over it with the gunmetal to kind of clean up some of my greasy thumbprints. And then what I need to do is let this sit for a day or two at least, and then hit the highlights again. Here's a minimal success story for the weekend. I did get the engines all together, and they're all lit up, and they're stuck on by a thread here onto this battery. But take your successes where they come, because they don't come that often.